The heat in San Miguel was suffocating. It hadn't rained in 3 weeks, and by Tuesday, the faucets in the Cruz household started spitting out nothing but brown rust and air. "The main line is busted again," Elias grumbled, slamming the wrench onto the kitchen floor. He looked at his son, Mark, who was 18 and already taller than him. "We need water for the toilets and the cooking. You know where to go." Mark felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He looked at the clock. It was 5:30 p.m. The sun was dipping behind the jagged tree line of the forest, turning the sky a bruised purple. "Can't we wait until tomorrow morning, Pa?" Mark asked. "The line for the well starts at 4 a.m. If you go then, you'll wait 5 hours. Go now, before it gets pitch black. Just stay on the path and don't talk to anyone you don't recognize." Mark grabbed 2 heavy plastic blue containers. He knew the stories. Every kid in San Miguel grew up hearing about the Bukal. The elders said it wasn't just a well, it was a vein. They said that during the Spanish occupation, the ground had tasted so much blood that the water turned sweet to things that weren't human. The walk to the well took 15 minutes. The path was narrow, flanked by overgrown tall grass that whipped against Mark's jeans. The air grew colder the deeper he went into the woods. When he reached the clearing, the well sat there, a crumbling stone cylinder with a rusted iron crank. It looked like a rotted tooth sticking out of the earth. Mark froze. The crank was moving, but no one was holding it. He squinted through the dim light. A woman was standing on the opposite side of the stone ledge. She was wearing a thin, stained nightgown. Her hair was long, black, and matted like wet seaweed. "Need help?" she whispered. Her voice sounded like dry leaves scraping on pavement. "I'm fine," Mark said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm just here for the water." "The water is heavy tonight," she said. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Mark stepped forward, keeping as much distance as possible. He hooked his first container to the rope and lowered it. The well was deep, deeper than it should have been. It took a long time to hear the splash. As he started cranking it back up, the weight felt wrong. It was too heavy. It felt like he was pulling up a lead weight, not 5 gallons of water. The sun was gone now. The only light came from Mark's flashlight, which he had propped up on a rock. The beam flickered. When the container finally reached the top, it wasn't filled with clear water. The liquid was dark, almost black, and thick. It smelled like a butcher shop on a hot day. Mark's hand shook. He looked into the well, shining his light down the hole. The light hit the surface of the water 20 feet below. But there was no reflection of Mark. Instead, he saw dozens of pale, white faces staring back, up at him. They were packed together like sardines, floating just beneath the surface. Their eyes were wide, and their mouths were open, revealing rows of needle-thin teeth. "They're thirsty," the woman said. Mark spun around. She was standing right behind him now. Up close, he could see that her skin wasn't just pale. It was translucent. He could see the black veins pulsing in her neck. Her nightgown wasn't cloth. It was shredded skin. Mark dropped the rope and tried to run, but his work boots slipped on the wet stones. He fell hard, the air rushing out of his lungs. The woman lunged. She didn't move like a person. She moved like an insect, skittering across the ground on all fours. She pinned Mark down, her fingers digging into his shoulders. Her fingernails were like jagged glass, slicing through his shirt and into his skin. "Don't scream," she hissed. "It makes the meat sour." Mark kicked wildly. He grabbed his heavy metal flashlight and swung it with everything he had. It connected with the side of her head with a sickening crack. She didn't cry out. She just hissed, her head hanging at an unnatural angle. He scrambled to his feet, leaving the water containers behind. He ran toward the path, but the woods had changed. The trees seemed closer together, the branches reaching out like skeletal fingers to catch his clothes. Behind him, he heard a sound that made his blood turn to ice. It was the sound of dozens of wet bodies climbing out of the well. Slap, 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 the sound of bare, cold feet hitting the mud. Mark didn't look back. He pushed through the brush, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He could hear them behind him, not running, but gliding. They were whispering his name. "Mark, stay. The water is so cold." He saw a light in the distance. His house. He sprinted, his legs burning. He burst through the back door and slammed it shut, throwing the heavy iron bolt just as something slammed into the wood from the outside. The door groaned. "Dad! Dad, help!" Mark screamed. The house was silent. He ran into the kitchen. His father was sitting at the table, his back to the door. "Dad, there's something at the well. We have to go now." His father didn't turn around. "You didn't bring the water, Mark." Mark stopped. He noticed a dark puddle forming under his father's chair. It wasn't water. His father slowly turned his head. His skin was gray, and his eyes were gone, replaced by the same milky white film Mark had seen in the well. His father opened his mouth, and a thick, dark liquid dripped onto the floor. "I went to check on you," his father said, his voice gurgling. "I got thirsty." Mark backed away toward the living room, but the front door was already standing wide open. The woman from the well was standing in the frame, the moonlight silhouetting her twisted shape. Behind her, dozens of pale figures stood in the yard, waiting. They weren't there to kill him quickly. They were gathered around the large plastic containers Mark had dropped. They were filling them with their own dark, foul blood. "Drink," the woman said, stepping into the house. Mark realized then that the well wasn't a source of water at all. It was a trap. Once the town ran dry, the people would go to the well, and once they drank, they belonged to the Bukal. Mark looked at his father, who was rising from the chair, his jaw unhinging. Mark backed into the corner of the kitchen, grabbing a steak knife from the counter, though he knew it was useless. The woman reached out a cold, wet hand. "Don't worry," she whispered. "In San Miguel, no one stays thirsty for long." The lights flickered and died. The only sound left was the slow, rhythmic slap, slap, slap of wet feet on the linoleum floor.